Hello, I'm Susan DeLeo, Digital Inclusion Specialist at Oak Hill Collaborative. You're watching Week 2 of Raspberry Pi After School Online, brought to you by Oak Hill Collaborative and Success After 6. This week is very exciting as we'll be going over all the different parts or components of the PC. As a matter of fact, during this week's lab assignment, you will be role-playing the different parts of the computer. But first, I'm going to hand it over to this week's presenter, Sarah Nadzin, who will teach you what all these different computer parts are.
Hi, I'm Sarah Nadzin, and I'm an electrical technician. Before we get started for this week, let's make sure you have everything you need to succeed. In the mail this week, you should have received a QR code to watch this video, the parent or guardian guide, and your Week 2 assignment, including the CPU, ALU, display, and answer sheets. Alright, so this is the computer you'll be receiving. This is a Raspberry Pi, but it's also a system on a chip. It is just like this computer here, but it is much smaller. It is more compact, which means it has less power, but it's still very useful. Now, it has all the same components that a regular computer does, like the CPU, which is underneath this heatsink. Without the heatsink, the CPU would get too overheated and can't do the math that a computer needs to function. This is the CPU on a Raspberry Pi, which is also under a heatsink. Next up is the power supply. This is a power supply for a regular computer. It powers up the entire computer. Without this, the computer cannot run at all. On the Raspberry Pi, we have a port to supply the power, which is right here. Next up is the hard drive. This is a hard drive for a regular computer, and it handles all of the storage. It has all of our data on it, including things like videos, video games, photos, and songs. Without this, you would have no storage at all for your computer. On a Raspberry Pi, we use SD cards as storage, as shown here. Next up is the RAM. A Raspberry Pi has RAM too small to show, but on a regular computer it is here. It helps the computer to think. Without it, we would do everything through the hard drive, and that is very slow. With RAM, we could speed up the process a lot, making it much easier to go through functions. And finally, we have the power button, which is shown here. This turns the computer on and off. Without this, it would be eternally on or eternally off. Now we're going to put together the actual computer to show you how everything works. First off, we've already installed the RAM, which helps the computer think. Without this, we go straight to the hard drive, and that is not nearly as fast as it would go with the RAM. Next up, we are going to put the hard drive together so we can have our storage for the computer. Right, so we will go ahead and plug these in. All right. And the power to the hard drive is also very important. Here we go. And now we connect it to the actual board, which is right here. Next up, we're going to install our power button so we can actually turn the computer off and on when it has power. And that goes right over here. And then we'll put our power supply in so we can actually give power to the board to turn the computer on. Here and over here. All right. And now we can turn it off and on. There we go. Parents and guardians, we urge that you play an active part in understanding this section as to help your child better understand the assignment. Please take pictures of your child while they work or take a picture of the assignment. There are helpful tips in the Parent-Guardian Guide as to how to take these snapshots. Once you have your pictures, the Parent-Guardian Guide will have where to email them to. There are 3 parts in this assignment: the CPU, the ALU, and the display. The CPU has to store the values that the ALU has solved. Each of these values is an X coordinate and a Y coordinate that must be shaded in on the display. The child can choose which component to be, such as the ALU, and the parent can act as the CPU and display. This is to help with answer checking. Now the assignment has been explained, it's time to get started. Pause the video and good luck. Welcome back! How do you think you did? If you got them all right, great. If not, that's okay too. We're so good at being people that it might be a little difficult role-playing as the computer for once. Next week, you'll be receiving your very own Canna kits, and the adventure can begin. Until next time, this has been Sarah Naidzen, and you've been watching Raspberry Pi After School Online with Oak Hill Collaborative.